I used to separate building up and tearing down as if they were two totally different ideas rather than one perpetual loop. See, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It simply transfers from one thing to another. We are renting everything in this world, grabbing little pieces of life as we run through it. And what we leave behind in the rear view has the potential to tug at our heartstrings as we see it collapse into the horizon, sure. But it also has to. Yesterday was, in its own way, the beginning, a nurturing parent preparing you for the world of today. Pushing you out the front door, and maybe you don't feel ready, we never do. But things have to go in order for more to arrive. The tearing down is the building up. I have a significant relationship with this idea, letting go. I think because it's personally been one of my greatest adversaries. And the words that escape our lips pull back the curtain on who we are. Humans are just projectors with eyes. As my words escape, the hope is something beautiful will be let in. As I'm sitting here, writing, speaking, I'm thinking about how exciting the prospect of scaling this message, growing this brand, helping more people, adding more value, while simultaneously dancing around the terror of relinquishing some level of creative control with my work. You can't, of course, grow and still do things how you did them in a one-bedroom apartment in 2014. This isn't new. I've been grappling with it in different contexts for years. It's so personal to me, but the reality is there's no gray space here. This situation is clear as glass. You have to let go in order to acquire. You have to tear down those barriers in order to make room for more. This is and always has been a me conversation. A look at myself in the mirror conversation. Eddie, what are you willing to let go of? Because there are ropes that must be cut. See, these conversations hurt, but they are the transfer mechanism to all that is beautiful. Being self-aware hurts. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that it hurts less than operating in a state of consistent delusion. So I offer this question to you. What was the last conversation you had with yourself? When was your last "is what I want and what I'm doing" aligned conversation? When was your last "am I holding on to too much" conversation? Your last "if I want parts of me to be reborn, am I willing to let the unnecessary things die" conversation? Life is a cycle, and we forget that. As we get comfortable, as we become accustomed to routine, it's easy to forget. Are we shedding the old or hiding within it? In Gary Keller's One Thing, he mentions how a domino can knock over another domino 50% larger. So if you were to start with a 2-inch domino and keep increasing the one next to it by 50%, the 23rd domino in the progression would be able to knock over the Eiffel Tower. The 31st would be as tall as Everest. The 57th domino would be able to bridge the gap between the Earth and the Moon. See, but it must be understood that it's the 50% growth from domino to domino that makes the difference. If each domino stays the same size, you don't get any remarkable transformation. And in many ways, that's what we do. We want the moon, but we stay that 2-inch domino. That's my example of holding on to perhaps too many aspects of the creative process. that holding on prevents the 50% jump. For you, the journey before you will be a different one with different characteristics. But the rule's the same. The old dominoes must fall in order to create something new. That energy must be passed on. And it is capable of transferring, this is the important part, to something much bigger than itself. That's why we allow the old to fall. It's not that it's valueless. It's that its value was in setting up the brilliance that now awaits. You can't be afraid to tear down the old, right? We have to seek out that fearlessness that exists within us. It's crippling our growth, diminishing our capacity to live life to the fullest. That's what's scary. Protecting that which no longer serves us is what's dangerous. So let yesterday fade into the rear view. It may hurt, it may tug at those heartstrings, but when you look back years from now, it will be the reason, the very reason you'll have embarked upon the adventure of a lifetime. It's what you destroyed that will have opened the door for everything, brought forth the manifestation of the beautiful life you ultimately came to build. I was recently in Dallas visiting some old friends and was chatting with someone that I've been friends with for a long time, and he was mentioning that he'd gone through some pretty big life changes over the past few years and was excited about the fact that after a pretty rough stretch, he had recovered or found his workout routine again, sort of a revival in his old identity. Because for context, he'd always been a pretty athletic guy growing up. But just like can happen to anyone, other things emerged and took priority, right? They swept in and, kind of consumed him for a period of time. And I guess, in a way, that part of him that used to fire on all cylinders was buried. He lost it. And so anyway, we're talking, and he's saying that he had been a little down, put on a little weight. And the struggle was, according to him, making time for fitness in his now incredibly busy life. He's got a toddler running around, a very time-intensive job. On top of that, he's remodeling houses. He's doing a lot. And this is the part that stood out to me. He said, Eddie, I've tried everything. I went through, quick phases where I was motivated, but I couldn't, maintain that consistency. I was working. And then after work, I'd be with my son, who was, just too little to leave alone for 45 minutes. And this is what's funny because it sounds so simple, but, he says, I found a gym with a daycare so I could bring my son and work out for 45 minutes. And that's when I was able to establish a routine, and that one action or decision allowed my entire life to get back on track, right? That was the rock I had to move, which is the phraseology that I want to focus on here. I think it's brilliant the way he said it. Basically, once I could figure out how to work out on afternoons when he's with me, I was able to make it go from sometimes a thing to always a thing. That was, again, the rock that had to be moved. And now I can clearly see from the conversation, right? The guy's happier, feels better about himself. And you know how it is when you're in that space, it starts to carry over into all aspects of life. And I'm thinking, this is so powerful, right? I told him I'm going to steal his rock metaphor and share it on the podcast on YouTube, because that, in my opinion, is the way to look at meaningful change. He nails it. It's not what do I need to get or acquire or add, like, we tend to think in those situations. No, it's what's preventing me from leveling up. What do I need to move, to get rid of? Where's the boulder I have to push out of the way? And sure, there's a temptation to perhaps oversimplify, but I think that's exponentially better than the alternative, which is making things unnecessarily complex. And in a way, that's what humans do best anyway, right? The world is infinite numbers and data points and variables. Humans just pick a few and create stories with them, right? So to me, there is value in truly simplifying and saying, okay, that's where I want to be. What's the one thing I could remove that would free me up to start moving that way? Where is my rock that has to be relocated? And it's funny when we find those things, right? It's like turning on the light in a dark room. Everything begins to make sense. You feel momentum. You feel like you're in it. And again, how you feel when you go to bed at night becomes your identity. It's not because you're solving the problem right away, but because you feel that progress. Progress equals happiness, right? Human beings are invigorated by meaning, the pursuit of purpose. When we're stuck, the painful part isn't necessarily being stuck as much as it's that we're not moving towards what matters. We need that growth. And for my buddy to see that, it was moving the mental rock of, I can't have a good workout when I'm watching my son. Those two things are mutually exclusive. Remove that limiting belief and boom. And maybe in your particular situation, there are numerous rocks that need to be moved. Incredibly plausible, right? But we can only move one at a time. And like dominoes, you have to push the first one down before the others start to fall. So where can you push? Which I also like because it emphasizes the power and control we have in our own lives. Again, situations are messy and complex. I get that. But if you can simplify it down to what is one thing that's preventing me from going or changing or stopping or whatever it is for you, what's the big obstacle? Okay, there it is. Let's chip away. Let's move this thing. It's as if your frustration over immobility is a dam, right? And what you need to do isn't add more water to the reservoir, but find out what you can remove to start letting that water flow, right? You want it to move freely. Because I believe life is a momentum game. It really is. Like, you win when you feel like you're progressing, when you feel like you're taking steps. That's when you're excited. That's when you jump out of bed invigorated. That's where you look for solutions. So look around you. There's always a step to be taken. In fact, I simplified to the extent that my mantra is, number one, know that change is possible. And number two, know that the next move is within an arm's reach of where you stand right now. Understanding and believing those two things is power. Right? Don't get disillusioned by how far the top of the mountain feels or how long you've been in one place wishing things were different. None of that matters. The goal is to manufacture momentum, and that's what you do. So do it by initiating one small action that frees you up to start walking that way. And it's amazing, when you're in motion, things seem to make sense in a way that they simply didn't when you were stationary. That's why it's important to understand that you don't need to have all the answers. In fact, it's impossible to have all the answers. The journey provides them. Right? The path contains the secrets. Therefore, the goal should be to get yourself stepping down that path. No overly harsh, out of this world, unrealistic expectations. No, simply be your own biggest ally here. Remove what you don't need and free yourself of that unnecessary minutia. It's go time. And I go back and forth often, as you've heard me do here, right? It's like, yes, life is messy, it's complex, that's true. It's a culmination of infinite variables and data points, but guess what our job is? Guess what your power is? To hone in on the select few of them necessary to tell your story. Human beings have survived for thousands and thousands of years because we are masters of simplification. Masters of ignoring what we don't need and distilling the complex down into what's actionable. And perhaps that's where you are now, what you need to do most. It's like, I'm not where I want to be. Okay, in simple terms, where do I want to be? What does my mountaintop look like? What am I doing now that's just getting in the way? Right? And what rocks do I need to move that will get me started down that path to something new? There are some pretty basic themes that consistently reemerge in most of my videos and podcast episodes. Right? The idea of us having control, agency. The idea that fear can be an ally, or as Joseph Campbell states, the cave you fear holds the treasure you seek. The idea that you're not your past, right? And there are a few more. But essentially, today's episode takes them all and places them in the palm of your hand. It reminds you that in totality, this is all about you being the author of your story. And you don't need the whole book written. Ideas, character development, and all that stuff will come into your head as you write, as the pen hits the paper. You just need to find that starting point. Self-assess. Identify that little piece of opportunity that was hidden beneath the excess. And begin. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Viktor Frankl. So much of life comes down to how we arrange and internalize what we see. Our realities will always be comprised of what we choose to look at. Now, that's not to say the unfortunate or quote-unquote bad things aren't present, but whether or not you choose to keep them in your life, in your field of vision, that's on you. Here are two ways I like to explain this. The first was explained to me as a curtain hung from a stage, and this curtain has holes and tears all throughout. On the other side of the curtain, there's an auditorium, some chairs, aisles, a few lights. But depending on which hole or tear you chose to look out of, you'd see a different piece of that picture. And it can be said that the curtain is life, and the hole you choose to look through makes up your reality. The little piece of information you choose to consume. Because life is certainly complex, right? There are too many images and variables for us to notice all of them. That's impossible. We'd collapse in on ourselves. We have to pick a few. Which means that our entire existence, from the time we're born to the time we die, is dependent entirely on which details we choose to focus on. Which ones we use to tell our story. Which leads me to the second example. Let's say you decide you're going to walk to your car. You open your front door, you walk down your driveway, right up to your car, open the door, and get in. Your story was, I'm going to my car. And so everything you experienced was related to that. In the sense that you didn't notice the driveway of the person 7 houses down. You weren't looking for that. And you didn't notice the potholes across the street. You weren't looking for that either. You didn't think about the funny-shaped cloud over your head. That wasn't on your mind. Why would it be? All these things weren't part of the story, right? And the idea is we are very selective of the things we pay attention to. We use a small fraction of the world to tell our stories. And this matters because when we are down or stuck or disappointed or whatever it is, it's not that you don't have a reason to be. We're emotional creatures and things happen, But it is true that you don't have to stay there. That the little hole you are looking out of from behind the curtain may not be serving you. Your viewpoint may not be the best viewpoint. But it's in your control, right? You choose what hole you want to look through and then use life to create supporting details. When you're focusing on the negative or why you aren't good enough, you'll find things that support that narrative. Choose a different story, and you'll start seeing different pieces that support it. I'm sure you've all heard how when you're looking to buy a car, you start seeing more and more of that car on the road. It's not because they suddenly appeared overnight on 95. No, they've always been there. They've been in the mix. But now it's become a part of your story. You're looking through a new hole in the curtain. Therefore, your focus has changed. And that's what I mean when I say reality is a choice. The details will match your beliefs. Believe you are incredible, you'll find evidence. Believe this is just the beginning of something beautiful, and you'll find the details necessary to bring it to life. You get what you focus on. So focus on the things that will propel you forward, because trust me, they're there. We sat around in a circle on a beautiful fall morning to build dream catchers. Something, to be honest, I never saw myself doing in a million lifetimes. The feathers and strings and beads and glue stretched out on a blanket in the middle of the circle. As we built, we took what we needed piece by piece. And it's safe to say, mine was far and away the least, let's say, aesthetically pleasing of the group. Black and bright yellow string wrapped around the top, above which an assortment of random beads sort of dangled carelessly below. It wasn't the most beautiful dream catcher ever made, but it was mine. After a quick Google search, I learned that some Native Americans believe that the air at night is filled with dreams, both good and bad, and that the purpose of the dream catcher is to protect from the bad ones, the nightmares and the evil spirits. Interesting, I thought, putting it away, expecting that to be that and life to move on. But a few days later on the flight home, I got up mid-flight to grab a charger out of my carry-on overhead. And in the same side pouch was, you guessed it, that little black and yellow dream catcher. One of the dangled strings had snapped. My sloppy craftsmanship already was causing the top to loosen up. But something compelled me to grab it, along with my charger, and I sat back down. I had 8.5 hours to kill, put my chair back, and closed my eyes. The previous week had been an important one. A complete break from, my typical day-to-day routine. And probably more important, some forced introspection. I like to think of the trip as briefly leaving the heart of a city. Which, when you're in a city, you obviously know you're there, but you can't really grasp the magnitude and scope of the place. Not until you leave it and see it from the outside. The gorgeous skyline with the lights and buildings that extend into the clouds. A picture you only get from a distance. That skyline from 5 miles away just doesn't feel like it could be the same place you live in. You navigate every day street by street with car horns and cafes and people talking, coming and going. It just kind of flips life upside down for you. Presents new perspectives and questions, and I felt like that's what I'd done. Stepped outside that metaphorical city. And I'd picked up a solid handful of new questions. There were plenty of firsts for me. Met some incredible people, tried new things, went new places, explored new foods. All made me realize that, my worldview had slowly over time, as tends to happen when unchecked, collapsed in on itself. That there was so much more, so much hope and opportunity, so much left. To the extent that the flight back didn't feel like the end of a trip, it felt like the beginning of something new. Like I wasn't leaving these things, I was taking them with me. But here's the deal. Beginnings only matter if you make them matter. Things only change when you make them change. When I was in junior high, one of my teachers would sometimes joke that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Half serious, but the point is important. It's not what we intend to do. It's what we breathe life into. It's what we allow to take shape. Let's say that little dream catcher in my hand was a magical entity that sucked out of the sky all the bad dreams and nightmares and left me with only the good stuff. Let's say it was the gateway to all that was powerful, meaningful, and important. Because removing what I don't want is critical. But what I'm then left with is mere opportunity, not guarantee. Dreams are only potential, and life is only what we make it. So growth must be a team effort between me and this little black and yellow defender of worlds, watchman of the night. A duo. And we agreed. It reminds me of what truly matters, and I show it that I'm not afraid to make something of what remains. Of those ideals granted passage to the space behind my eyes. I have to live up to my end of the bargain. And sure, it will be messy at times, shaky, sloppy, ungraceful. But that isn't a problem. It's par for the course. Plus, my lack of elegance will get no sympathy from my unraveling black and yellow ball of string and disordered beads. Right? The goal is not perfection. It's organized chaos. It's a commitment to the unknown, to taking the pieces and building something with them, even when we don't understand what it will become. And as the pilot's voice interrupted my sleep through the intercom, letting us know to prepare for landing, I realized the magic of where I'd just been and how it would evolve into the road ahead. That when we know in our hearts life is pointing us a certain direction, when we've separated the good dreams from the bad, we are halfway there. Now we must have the courage to realize what's possible. To be strong enough to stand up when we have something to say. To embrace what calls to us, to explore where our paths may lead. To get up and dance when the music plays. To stop holding back tears when they must fall. To smile when our hearts intend. To leave the old stories and narratives behind and to step beyond our egos and towards our authenticity. This is how we make sure that the dream catcher's work is not in vain. It's how we make the most of this gift we've been provided. And so we sat in a circle on a beautiful fall morning to build dream catchers. Maybe not to collect the bad dreams, but to remind ourselves that it was okay, no, necessary, no, everything, to let ourselves make the good dreams reality. Peter Drucker has said that what gets measured gets improved. And this insight's been incredibly valuable to me over the years. I want to explain why. Until you measure something, you're operating in somewhat of a black box. You're essentially guessing, aiming at targets you can't see, which ultimately means you're leaving life up to chance. But once you begin to gauge your progress in a specified area, you now have information to work with. You have an increased sense of awareness and the ability to focus, which, as I've said before, and believe wholeheartedly, what you focus on becomes your reality. So here's a quick example that I think adequately paints a picture here of what I'm talking about. Way back when I first started my business, I was chatting with a friend about wanting to grow my YouTube subscribers, add value to as many people as I possibly could with my work. Back then, it was all YouTube. That was the crux of my business. And so the first question he asked, he goes, just out of curiosity, how many subscribers join the channel daily? And I realized in that moment, I don't know. I knew the total amount, like I kept tabs on that, but not the sort of daily fluctuation, how much grew on Monday versus Friday, that type of thing. And this guy, he had a tracker. He's very big on that. Basically a sheet with the most important things that he's trying to change in his life. And every day when he would wake up, he'd record a quick measurement in each of those categories. And my first thought was, that's a little over the top. It's a little extra. But hey, one of my favorite mantras is that you are your own experiment. And I was happy to try something new that, could have a positive impact. And so I did. I started recording daily the net subscribers that join the Your World Within community. And what I found was incredible. They say it's the simple things that make the greatest difference in our lives, and this would certainly be no exception, right? First and foremost, just seeing that number every day kept growth at the forefront of my mind. It kept me aware and excited and thinking through that lens as if I were on a journey or mission to outperform the me of yesterday. Right? If on some random day you grow 30% more than you usually do, it's only normal to see that and ask, well, why can't this happen every day? Why can't this be my reality? And next, and probably more obvious, it armed me with the tools to tactically improve my performance. Those daily metrics helped me find critical answers, arrive at important conclusions. What days of the week and weeks of the year have the greatest impact? What trends lead to increased viewership? My daily average subscriber count is X. I wonder what it would take to bring it to Y. Right? And so basically, instead of just showing up every day with my fingers crossed and hoping I'd hit it out of the park, I had a more informed approach. It's like taking a blindfold off. And all of this prompted by writing one little number down in the morning. The more I did this, the more it became obvious that it should be implemented in other aspects of my life. If this is important to me, if I say with conviction, this is an area I want to improve, how could I afford to not know the extent of its growth? And now I do track the handful of things I'm most invested in growing because those will be most impacted by my giving them attention. There's a saying that what you water grows. Well, your focus and your attention is what will water the seed, what will give it life. If you're looking to lose weight, but you never look at the scale, you're hurting yourself. Right? You might say, well, I don't want to be all about the numbers. Right? It's a lifestyle change. And I certainly agree. The point is not to track every single step you make. It's to realize how often we operate blindly. It's to show you that with 100% certainty, your increased awareness and attention dedicated to any pursuit will make you more effective in bringing about your desired result. Knowing your daily progress keeps you in the game. It keeps you excited and also arms you with the tools to make the necessary changes. See, we are brilliant creatures capable of incredible things. But it's critical that we position ourselves so that we can win the game. It's critical that we not only look, but see. To be simplified, to condense life down to only what's important and to monitor those things that are important to you will give you a tremendous advantage. And again, this is basic stuff, but we skip the basic stuff because we think the big changes come from complexity. They don't. They come from choosing a target and working to get closer and closer to its bullseye. Like Greg McCune says in Essentialism, growth often has nothing to do with the acquisition of more. Sometimes it's about eliminating the things we don't need and focusing on that which we do. Now I'm suggesting we take it one step further and measure our growth as we take those meaningful things into the great unknown. Life can be challenging, that's no secret. So why not arm ourselves with every advantage available to us? Why not keep yourself excited and invested and knowledgeable? Often we look around at what we don't have and think, man, I could never have what they have. I could never do what he or she does. The reality is, they identified what matters and brought it to life one small step at a time. And guess what? You can do the same. It's not a miracle you need, it's awareness. So here's to keeping your eyes open, to not only looking but seeing, and in doing so, getting results from the opportunity we otherwise would walk right by. Sometimes all we need is a reset, a new beginning, fresh start, a transformed perspective. Do you remember those pictures that used to make their way around from time to time and looked pretty obvious at first glance, right? But if you really examined it, you would see that the picture of the young woman or whatever it was also an older woman, right? Differing based on how you looked at the lines. And depending on who was looking, they might have a proclivity towards seeing one or the other. But when made aware of the picture's duality, they could always see both. Okay, and there's something to this. This idea is something we should lean on, because I'll tell you what, sometimes our natural proclivity is to see the thing that's not helpful. The first thing we see is an excuse or self-pity. The first thing we see is a list of insecurities or doubts. And we have to remember to take a step back and look again, to examine harder. Because it's amazing how differently things evolve when you make a point to see their value. For example, let's say someone has something you want, something you wished was yours. Right? And maybe your default is, you are less than. Your life is not what it should be. But if you step back and looked again, you would see a few things. One, we're all running different races. Right? You're competing against you, not anyone else. Two, think about everything you do have that someone else would give anything for. And three, if you truly do want that thing, how about applauding yourself for having goals, for having desires, for wanting to push the boundaries of life? Now the question is, can you seek to truly understand what that desire is and map out, your path to bring it into existence? This is nothing but an opportunity, right? And how could it be anything else? Life's challenges, life's losses, they are wins. They contain within them the DNA to create change, to progress. But one must be able to move beyond the instinct to label it a problem or a net negative. There are and will always be wins where you choose to see wins. As I've heard Tony Robbins mention on many occasions, this isn't closing your eyes and saying, there are no weeds, there are no weeds, there are no weeds, when your garden is full of them. No, it's understanding a simple truth. You'll never leverage value that you don't believe is there. Seeing it is always step one, because it gives you a foundation to stand on as you build. It's picking up the pen and starting that next chapter. It's choosing your worldview. If you lose money, how would one react to, I can't believe it's gone, things will never be the same, my life is over? Versus, okay, obviously I learned how to acquire it in the first place. Time to do it again. I'm wiser, I'm more aware, and life is abundant. The person that wakes up thinking the former would probably have a hard time getting out of bed. The person telling herself the second story would be motivated to go make things happen. Her worldview has incentivized her. That's why thoughts become things. How we think directly translates into how we act, and our daily actions become our reality. Look, we've all found ourselves in situations where we struggle to see the good in things, where life knocks us down and the opportunity seems to hide itself. But that's exactly what it's doing, hiding itself. It is there, it's always there. It's there when you've lost something, it's there when you've taken a wrong turn. You get the point. And I'm going to differentiate here between simple and easy, because the idea of stopping and forcing yourself to find the positive, it's simple, but it's not easy. It's oftentimes not the natural thing to do. But if you can ask that of yourself, you will find the wins that others walk right by. You'll be the change you want in yourself, because the outside world will act as the toolbox to make that happen. Remember, we often can't control what the world gives us, but we can always control what we do about it. And that ability is what I believe separates human beings and their level of growth, success, and achievement. Right? Next time you find yourself down and out, sure, do your thing, handle it how you must. But don't forget that golden rule. It's not what you look at, it's what you see. And when you examine the world around you, point to one, however small, value add that will pick you up, get you back on your feet, and move you forward to that more ideal reality. Sometimes what we need most is not what we think we need most. It's not that break we've been waiting for the universe to provide, or the answer we've been desperately seeking. No, sometimes we need only 3 words. Don't give up. Don't turn back now. And see, I know you want to. And that the meaningful thing, the right thing, requires we give all of ourselves. It, metaphorically speaking, is the most expensive, exhausting, sometimes disheartening. But this is your reminder that there will come a point when you look back on this moment and the best thing you'll have ever done will have been continuing to put one foot in front of the other, continuing forward despite the circumstances, towards that which means something to you. I remember in South Florida, a handful of years ago, I just moved down here and was exploring the area a little bit, looking for a place to live, and I found this kind of odd little park in between a parking lot and the beach. And I pulled over, just started walking around, and ended up sitting down on this bench that faced the ocean and just looked out for a while. I remember looking at the people who all seemed so happy. They all seemed fulfilled, looked like they had it all together. I looked at the ocean that was so much bigger than me, so vast, so powerful. At the non-stop stream of planes flying overhead that all seemed to have a direction, a purpose. They had their courses mapped. And I think I remember it so vividly because I'd never felt more alone than at that moment. Like deeply, painfully alone. And it's not that I enjoy bringing up these types of experiences. I bring them up because time has revealed repeatedly that from these moments of doubt and sometimes even despair come what we need most. So long as we don't run from what the world is trying to provide us. It's as though we must experience emptiness before we can become fulfilled. We need to be overcome with this sensation that there's no way out before realizing that there is always a way, so long as we're willing to find it. And the pain associated with that willingness, well, it far outweighs the alternative. I often break things down into this dichotomy of the easy, meaningless way versus the hard, meaningful way. But that may be oversimplified, right? Easy compared to what? Hard compared to what? It's easy to shut down when we're at our lowest. It's easy to stop when it hurts. But easy now evolves into what's actually incredibly difficult tomorrow. A difficult, heart-wrenching, regretful forever. Admittedly, a controversial figure, but regardless, one of the most important quotes I've ever read was by Lance Armstrong in his book, It's Not About the Bike. He says, pain is temporary. It may last a minute, or an hour, or a day, or a year, but eventually it will subside, and something else will take its place. If I quit, however, it lasts forever. See, the easy thing versus the hard thing is too simplified, void of imperative context. The question is, in our darkest moments, will we stand up when it hurts so that we can walk, run, and ultimately sprint towards what matters? There's a realization that helped me. Because when we're in these situations, the thought goes like this. Things are wrong, things are broken, my life isn't what it should be. I need to fix this and make it whole, make it right, so I can live a good life like everyone else. Like, there's a deep loneliness associated with that misconception, as though the world is put together, but I am not. Well, let me dispel that notion and end that narrative. The world is a series of objects that mean nothing other than the value we place upon them. 7 billion people, all fighting their own battles, all trying to make sense of things, all pretending like the little fairy tale they've manufactured in their heads is the real thing or the right thing, when in actuality we are all just passengers along on a ride we do not understand. Fighting battles that we don't often comprehend and cannot grasp. But you are not broken. You are human, perfectly imperfect, equipped with the tools to take another step forward despite the chaos and the uncertainty. Steps that become, in the end, everything. I remember reading about Jefferson, how he had migraines so severe while president that he would do most of his important work in the morning because of the high probability he could literally be incapacitated from noon on. And I just thought, man, we are all fighting battles. We're all doing what we can to make the most of our circumstance, to redirect discomfort into opportunity and pain into progress. And what's most incredible is that we can. There's a saying that it's not supposed to be easy. That getting where you need to go requires the treacherous path associated with a hero's journey, the vast unknowns, the questions that remain unanswered for extended periods of time, the villains that seemingly inject themselves into our lives. Please understand that this is not a reflection of you, who you are and your capabilities. This is the game of life. This is today's difficulty in exchange for tomorrow's meaning. The pressure that creates the diamonds, and you don't have to be sure of anything other than that you know you will continue stepping forward because you can. Things won't always go right, but in the failures are the new tools to grow and redirect. You won't always feel on top of the world, but it's in the valleys of despair that we're forced to truly analyze, to think deeply, reapproach. And perhaps most importantly, you may have days where you let yourself down, fall short, perhaps lose sight of the courage to which you have attached your dreams, but that's okay. You are defined not by your mistakes, but by the present moment. Not some impossible expectation of perfection, but by your ability to rise and rise again. When it requires all of you to lift your head up and carry on. So go into that unknown, where fear is transformed into courage and doubt to strength. Go. Because if not here, where? And if not now, when? Go. All you need, you have. And when life finds you sitting down on a park bench, staring out at a world that feels too big and too complex, that seems impossible to navigate, find it within yourself to smile. Smile because of what you've already overcome, what you've been through, who you are. Remember that you are exactly where you need to be, staring up at the meaning in life as opposed to down at your feet. Now go. No miracles here, no mountains need be jumped or oceans crossed. But if you, one, step forward, and two, believe in yourself to put the pieces together as they arrive, there is nothing you can't do or be. There is no obstacle before you that is insurmountable. Just keep going. And sure, sometimes that's all we can do. But it also happens to be true that it is your greatest superpower to simply find a way to run if you can, crawl if you must, but find a way. Because deep down in your soul, the pieces are there. And it will be, at some point, as you look back, the greatest decision you've ever made. She had a picture framed on the table that said, "Make today amazing. Placed there to reminder just how much of life is a choice, how much we get to decide. It symbolizes that on our worst days, life hands us lessons, and on our best days, the highs of existence. During our low points, currency, and during our high points, the chance to cash it all in. Yeah, make today amazing. Because today's are few and far between. Today's are not an inconvenience, nor an obligation. Today's are what it's all about. Today is the big show. The answers we look for. The destinations we long for. Today is a place of dreams. That is, if you choose to leave room in your world for dreaming. Today is the beginning of wherever next is for you. A chance to see the new and normalize it. To stretch, to reach further out and pull impossible a little closer into your orbit. You can do that. And while one often can't control what they are given, they can control what becomes of what they are given. Like architects and designers engineering what will be and what the malleable world around them will become. When one raises their standards, life seems to accommodate. Because believing it means acting the part, means making the changes, means the external world makes room, means your identity is reinforced, and so the cycle goes. By making today amazing, you are making yourself more. Decisions are the beginning of all things. See, very rarely is the tool in and of itself the differentiator. It's the vision that pulls us through. And if you take something arbitrary, say a hammer, there's no way to, based upon its existence, determine what it will mean or what will become of it. A hammer can be an agent of chaos. It can smash and shatter and destroy. It can be the thing used to tear down. Or it can be what builds. It can connect. It can alter and redefine so that something, when all is said and done, is brought into an existence that never was. It was never the tool. It was how the eyes viewed the tool. It was the vision that designated the roles that made today amazing. And the reason we all need this reminder, as far as I can tell, is because the difficult things just so happen to be the meaningful things. Because we are fighting not against some little rule or idea we picked up along the way. We are fighting against our DNA, against thousands and thousands of years of evolution. Because the fear that kept our ancestors alert and alive now in a totally new world keeps us contained and our talents minimized. The approval of others that kept us safe and secure as we once traveled the landscape in small groups, hunting and gathering, well, now it keeps us needlessly looking over our shoulders and craving acceptance. The unknowns that kept us out of the dark cave with the predator living in its shadows now keeps us confined, looking out at life's potential through self-made windows. We need to be reminded to make today amazing, because those things are quite the adversaries. Because our default is to just let the ship sail. Our default is to simply survive. After all, that is the standard and the rule by which living things abide. Make it another day. But I believe you are more than a living thing. The godlike ability to not just exist in a world, but create new ones is a miracle, both a blessing and a responsibility. To drive towards a more fulfilled you, a happier you, a healthier you, a more complete you. But one must first become aware that around them exist the pieces required to build something never before seen. The vehicle to those far-off places that were once only dreams, thoughts, illusions. I've always believed that if it means something to you, it's not stupid. It warrants exploration. For even if the thought doesn't end up being all it was cracked up to be, even if it's not the destination, but only a stop along the way, it still pushes you to the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. It still moves you forward in this beautiful game of life. So decide. Decide to make today amazing. Choose to make it better. Let the obstacles lift you up and the momentum carry you towards something meaningful. When others stop and find reasons to doubt themselves, how about you find the small win buried, tucked away underneath it all? The little key that may do nothing more than get you through that next door. After all, sometimes that's what life's about. Picking up your head when it's most difficult and finding the next door to walk through. And the magic is knowing you can always do that. Because there always exists both the doorway and the key, but we must be willing to find it. That's the obvious thing about those doors. The right ones will open, but they require we find the strength to approach them. They require that we seek out amazing. And so with this in mind, what is the next chapter like for you? Are you currently enduring one of life's winters? Are you navigating those inevitable valleys of despair, in which the value is in finding that single ray of light amidst the storm? Looking within yourself for the courage to take one more step forward, and another, and another? Are you seeking out that spark that will reignite the fire in you? Because it's there, so long as you choose to make today amazing. Maybe you've climbed yourself out. Maybe you're looking for whatever's next, the new evolution, seeking to follow your heart and continue the beautiful progression that is life. Let the external world support that vision. Choose to see the detail not as trivial, but as the answers. The tools that will lift you up and support what you are building, it's there. She had a picture framed on the table that said, "Make today amazing." Placed there to remind her how much of life is a choice. Because in a world of options, what a gift to choose the journey of a lifetime. What a ride that awaits, so long as you decide to step in.